Okay, in today's lesson I'm going to introduce the blending modes in your layer palette right here and the concept of blending. We're going to do two different things. We're going to use these two pictures to blend them together to make it look like an old-timey 1850 photograph. And then the second part, we're going to use this photo and we're going to change her eye color and add some eyeshadow to her face. Okay, so let's start with these two photos first. Our objective is to combine these two photographs and make it look like an old-timey picture. So you can drag one picture into the other, okay, and you can see that this is kind of small, so you can just drag and make it a little bit bigger. This is called upscaling. You're making it bigger. I just for this exercise that's fine, but normally I wouldn't recommend you making it bigger than the original file size. But since this is just practice, it's fine. We can click OK, and we can move it. We can move it over here and hit OK. All right, and now let's just go ahead and crop a little bit of it so we get all this stuff out of the way. We can hit OK. So now we have this picture and we want to blend it with this background old sheet of paper. Okay, so what we can do is use our blending modes, right? So we click on the top layer. We're going to click on our blending modes and just take a couple minutes and play around and see the effect that each mode has on the two layers. Okay, and they have different effects, and some are more drastic than others, right? So play around with the different layers for a minute. Now, now that you've played around with the different blending modes, I want you to choose one that you think looks good. And what you're going to do is, after you're done with that, we're not done yet. I mean, it's a big help. It's a big step. We're mostly there. But remember, we have a few more options. We can, and I'm just going to drag this layer palette up. We can adjust the opacity of this layer as well if you want to blend it in some more. So why don't you blend in the opacity or change the opacity to a point where you think it looks good as well. Okay, so it's kind of faded. It's supposed to be 150 years old or so. And then from here, the last thing that we can do is you can add an adjustment layer, either hue and saturation or brightness and contrast, to kind of fine tune anything in this picture. So you can adjust the brightness and contrast if you want to, right, depending on what you like. Maybe lower the contrast, right, and then you can add another one, hue and saturation, and you can play around with the saturation as well. So now we have something like this, and it kind of looks like an old-timey blended photograph that, or not old blended, but a blended photograph between this black and white picture and this background layer. And remember, we haven't made any destructive edits, minus the cropping. We can always take the eye off, go back to normal, change the opacity back to 100%. Those are our original settings. So we stayed in line with the non-destructive editing style as well. All right. So the next lesson we're going to do, or next tutorial, is going to be with this picture right here. So let's go ahead and click on it. And what we're going to do today is we're going to change her eye color. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom. We're going to change her eye color and then add some, I think it's called eyeshadow. So let's zoom in on her eyes. Okay, and what I want you to do is I want you to create a brand new layer, and let's label this blue eyes. Or no, let's just label this eyes. Okay, because we might change the color from blue. So once you're on this layer, I want you to use the brush, I want you to choose a shade of blue, and at 100%, I'm going to use a hard edge brush. So you choose a hard edge brush, and I'm going to, at 100% opacity, color this in, and when in doubt, go over, because we can always mask it out at the end, but you don't want to leave any part of the eye that you want colored blue. So I'm going to make sure I'm coloring that in. That's fine. That's good. And you're like, well, wow, Mr. Tietzel, wow, that doesn't look that great. Well, here's the beauty of it. We're going to go to our blending modes now, and I want you to try color. Click on color, and that makes a good a good change. Now, a few things to kind of fine tune here to make this a little bit better. From here, we can change the opacity of that layer, right? So it's not 100% opacity. So maybe change it to about 50% or so. And then what we can do is we can go back and go to Enhance, Adjust Color and Lighting, and Hue and Saturation. Make sure you're on this layer, not the background layer. And then we can decrease the saturation of the eye color, right? So you can change it to a setting, and now it's kind of looking like it's purple. But you can go back up to Hue, and you can change the hue to change the color of the eyes, right? So that's kind of neat. And so I'm going to change them back so that they're a bluish color. You can also adjust the lightness and brightness of it as well. So go ahead and adjust the hue and saturation so that it's a nice blue looking color. And then the last thing that we're going to do is you can add a mask, and black will burn through, right? And just touch up any piece that needs to be covered up. Okay, so if you went over, which is fine, just kind of cover it up using the mask, right? And so now you can see the before and after. We totally changed the color of our eyes, right? And if you zoom out, you know, you wouldn't even be able to tell that we changed them in Photoshop. One last thing you could do with this is if you make the brush smaller, real small, you can and I'd maybe use a soft edge brush on this one. If you use the soft edge brush, you can mask out just the center part of her eyes as well, so there's not a light blue tint to them, right? So there you go. And now you can zoom out, and you can see the before and after. Okay. Now the next thing I want you to do is I want you to create a new layer, and I want you to rename this eyeshadow. And what we're going to do is go ahead and select a purple color, and I want you to use a paintbrush, and kind of like what we did last time, just at 100%, I want you to paint it in. And remember, it's better to go over than not cover everything, because we can always mask it out. And I'm going to just put in a little bit right here. Maybe make the brush size a little bit smaller to get in there. Alright, so go ahead and do that at 100%. Now, from here, and I'm just going to fill it in maybe some more. And from here, we're going to go to our blending mode, right? And make sure you're on the eyeshadow layer. Blending mode, and this time choose overlay. Okay, and you're like, wow, well, that's still kind of crazy. That's fine. And what I want you to do is when we changed it to overlay, I want you to change the opacity of it and lighten it up a lot, right? Maybe like 20% or 30% or so. And let's stick with 25% or so. Yeah, 25% will work. And from here, what you can do is, if you want, you can go to Enhance, Adjust Color, and Hue and Saturation again, and you can change the saturation. If it's still too pink or too purple, you can lower the saturation, so you can make it a little bit more subtle. I don't, that's a little bit too much, but maybe lower the saturation a little bit. And if you want, you could also change the color of the eyeshadow by changing the hue. Okay. And from here, I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And what we can do is, if you've overlapped too much, you can go and add a mask. And once you go on a mask, I'd make this a soft edge. And with the soft edge, and maybe lower the opacity to about 20, so it kind of blends in the edges. You see how it's kind of blending it in right there? That's because the opacity is at 20%, and I'm using a soft edge brush. So maybe just lightly go around the outside edges to help blend it in. Right, so blend it in like so. And so I'm not making any destructive edits, I'm just blending it. So now it's kind of blended in. You can zoom out, and now you can see the before and after with the eyeshadow, and then the before and after with the eyes. Okay?